All right, how's it going, everybody? Welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be giving you guys a deck tech on this crazy artifact combo deck I've created in the Pioneer format. This is something I've been trying to make work for a while in Pioneer. I have a bunch of different versions of this deck. Specifically, I've been interested in the interaction between the card Paradox Engine, which says whenever you cast a spell, untap all non-land permanents, and the card Emry, Lurker Loch, being able to cast artifacts out of your graveyard, and just trying to find a way to combo off that way. So this is a previous version of the deck. This is the best previous version of the deck, which would work sometimes. There was a lot of moving parts. It's pretty complicated to try to figure out, and there was a lot of clicking involved. What do we got? Ballista over there, yeah. And the new version of the deck that I have came up with here is a lot more streamlined, and it just works 120 times better. All thanks to the printing of this card, Kinnan Bonder Prodigy. Okay, so we'll go over all the cards in a second. I'm calling this deck Engine of War because it's focused around two main win conditions. One involving Paradox Engine and going on a combo rampage and casting a bunch of spells, finding your Aetherflux Reservoir, and doing 50 damage to them that way. Okay. Then the other way it wins is um, through Antiquities War, reaching the third chapter of its saga and turning all your artifacts into 5/5s and beating them down. And the reason that this is so cool is because you have multiple win cons in this combo deck. You don't need to combo off to win. You can also just beat them down. So it's like if your opponent's taking away your combo pieces and trying their best for you not to combo, then boom, all of a sudden they got, 6, 7, 8, 5/5s swinging in at them. And yeah, it makes this deck really resilient. Thing that's really cool about the Antiquities War as well is that in the first two sagas, or first two chapters, I mean, you'd look at the top five cards of your library and you put an artifact from among them in your hand. Okay. And that helps you find your combo pieces to go on your Paradox Engine comboing spree as well. So they play into each other really nicely. And the cards that you want with Paradox Engine in this deck and that work well with Paradox Engine in this deck are also the cards you would want with Antiquities War. You have a bunch of cheap artifacts, 0 mana and 1 mana artifacts, and you have a bunch of cantripping artifacts too, which just plays into both strategies. So that's really, really cool. And so how this all works essentially is that for Paradox Engine to be good, you want a bunch of mana rocks essentially and things that draw you cards. So you want things that produce mana, draw cards so you can cast more spells and just keep that loop going. So for things to produce mana, we have 4 copies of Mox Amber. And in this deck, we have 12 legendaries, Kinnan, Emry, and Teferi. To all turn on Mox Amber. So Mox Amber is usually always on, which is great. We also have the 4 Springleaf Drum, which produce mana as well. And we have the 4 Prophetic Prism, which draw a card and can filter mana, as well as the Golden Egg does the same thing. But with Kinnan out there, these cards actually produce positive mana, which is really good. So your Prophetic Prism becomes a can-tripping mana rock, which is really, really good. And to help support this whole plan, we've got the rest of our cards here. So we got the Ornithopters, which work well with the Springleaf Drum. They also work well with Antiquities War and Paradox Engine. A lot of times you'll only have 5 mana to cast the Paradox Engine, and just having a 0 mana artifact to trigger Paradox Engine and start your loop going is really, really good. We have 4 copies of Witching Well, which is an important piece in this deck. When it comes down to Scry 2, you can sack it for 4 to draw 2 cards. So that card works really well with Emry. Anything that you can sack and then keep casting and drawing cards with Emry is really, really good, which is why the Golden Egg is also so good, because you got to sack this one to produce a mana. It's not like the Prophetic Prism, but that ends up working to our advantage. In most cases, you just want the Prophetic Prism to be making mana, but the Golden Egg can also just win you the game too with Emry. So we have those cards there. We talked about Kinnan a bit. Its second ability, allowing you to put a non-human on the battlefield from your top 5 cards for 7 mana, is not so important, but it does come into play sometimes. But yeah, we're mainly just using he or she, not sure, 2020, for the mana ability. And we've got 1 copy of Azor's Gateway, and we're really just using it for the front side. We're not trying to flip it. And this is also great with Paradox Engine. You just go draw cards and loot through your deck to find the pieces you want, pieces you need to combo off and stuff like that. And the cool thing about this deck too is that we don't need the graveyard to combo off. We don't need Emry's to combo off. We don't even need Kinnan's necessarily to combo off. But these cards make it a lot easier. They make it a lot quicker. But we have ways around that, which is so cool. So that brings us into Teferi, actually. Teferi, it's like the perfect card for a combo deck because it doesn't allow your opponents to interact with you on your turn when you're comboing off, which is perfect. We already want it in there for that. Its ability to bounce something and draw a card is also very good. Either their cards or our own eggs. Bouncing a Prophetic Prism, drawing a card, and then casting a Prophetic Prism again feels pretty good. But the cool thing is also that Teferi is a combo piece in this deck. Teferi combos off with Ancestral Statue. So Ancestral Statue says when it comes into the battlefield, return a non-land permanent you control to its owner's hand. So if we got a Paradox Engine out there and probably Kinnan and like a Mox Amber and a Springleaf Drum to produce 4 mana, then we just create this loop where we cast Teferi's, bounce the Ancestral Statue, cast the Ancestral Statue, bounce Teferi. We're drawing cards every time we do that too. And we just go through our entire deck that way as well. So we can just combo on the surface without even using the graveyard, which is really good. But yeah, that's the gist of the deck. It's mana base is pretty straightforward. We got 4 Breeding Pool, 4 Hallowed Fountain, 1 Inventors Fair to find a combo piece, and 1 island for Spire of Industry for Yavimaya Coast. These are better than the fast lands in this deck because 1, we have a lot of generic mana anyway, and we need our land drops to hit. It's like having that extra mana could make all the difference of a win and a loss in this deck. So onto the sideboard here. Yes, indeed. We are a companion deck because we would be falling behind and not have a competitive edge if we weren't, apparently. Now, this is what Magic is. But we are utilizing Jegantha, the Wellspring, because we can. There was no deck building restriction. I had already built this deck as is, like this, and then realized that I could just put a companion in there. So I did, having a free 8th card. But it also can combo with our deck too, which is pretty insane. So it taps to add 5 mana. You can't spend it on generic spells or generic mana, but we got a lot of colored symbols in our deck, and with Kinnan on the board as well, you can produce 1 mana of any color when you tap it, and use that to cast generic spells, which works. So that's pretty cool. I hope that they change the ruling on this. I think that this is a horrendous mechanic, but that's for another video. So we got 2 copies of Tormod's Crypt, just to nuke someone's graveyard. The nice thing is that it also combos with Emry really well, Emry and Paradox Engine really well, so you can just keep looping them to keep untapping all of your non-land permanents. We also got 1 Soul Guide Lantern as another graveyard hate spell, because sometimes it just, if you just draw too many Tormod's Crypts, it's just bad. And having a way to just keep drawing cards is really good if you get that loop going. So that's why that's in there. 2 copies of Pithing Needle for Planeswalkers and other activated ability shenanigans. Important note that these artifacts can all be found off of our Antiquities War too. So this becomes a sideboard finding card as well, which is nice. And then we got 2 copies of Narset of the Veil for control and combo matchups. 4 copies of Knight of Autumn because the Swiss Army Knight is awesome. And it's everything we want in this deck. Is a hedge against artifact and enchantment decks, and it's really good against aggressive decks too. Just getting a 2/1 body on the board and gaining 4 life, just to stall the game out enough to combo off, is what we need. So against those aggressive decks. So we also have 2 copies of Supreme Verdict for creature-based decks, and 1 copy of Cataclysmic Gearhulk. I really like this one as a sideboard tool in this deck because you can find it with the Antiquities War. You can also cast it with Emry from the graveyard. And our deck utilizes artifacts, enchantments, creatures, and planeswalkers. So we're not getting hit so bad, but the opponent's probably going to have a really bad time when this comes down. So, yeah, big fan of that one. We do got to note that when we bring in the Narsets, the Supreme Verdicts, and the Cataclysmic Gearhulk, we don't get access to Jegantha, but Jegantha is not really a big plan or big part of our strategy here. It's just, most of the time when you cast it, it's just because you can cast a 5/5 and you need a card on the board. So yeah, that is the gist of the deck there. I will be playing this deck soon for you guys and putting it in action. I know it's a lot to kind of soak in while trying to explain it. It's actually hard to explain as well. So I'll get some videos out there of it. I just wanted to make a quick deck tech and show you guys something that I'm pretty proud of that I've been working on for a long time. So drop a thumbs up on the video, like, subscribe, and I'd really appreciate that. We'll see you guys next time. All right.